Hey friends, I'm Greg Nettle, and this is the Church Planting Podcast. I serve as president of Stadia Church Planting, where we believe that every person on the planet deserves access to a thriving, growing, multiplying church. Today on the Church Planting Podcast, we're going to be talking with Nick Bertram. Nick is an amazing business leader, leading a national business, building teams, but especially leading through challenge. I remember when I met Nick for the first time, we were out on a boat together, of all things, on the Sea of Galilee in Israel. And I spent about an hour sitting up on the front of the boat with Nick, just talking about how he brings Jesus to the local marketplace, how he faces challenges across the country in business, and how he blows through those challenges and turns them into incredible opportunities. Nick is going to talk with us about how we bring that same leadership into the church setting. So let's jump right in with Nick Bertram. So I'm absolutely delighted to have my friend Nick Bertram with us on the Church Planting Podcast. Nick, welcome and thank you for joining us.
It's awesome to be here, Greg. Good afternoon, good morning to whatever time somebody might be listening to this. Maybe good.
Yeah, all over the globe, Nick. So, Nick, this is really fun. Speaking of all over the globe, I mean, you and I are both here in the United States living currently, but the first time we met, of all the crazy things, was in Israel.
Yeah.
And we were out on the Sea of Galilee. This sounds like a crazy joke or something. We were out on the Sea of Galilee. Yeah. And we're out on the bow of a boat, and I think you and I spent about an hour out on the bow of that boat, just sitting there together and, learning about Jesus, and learning about each other and talking about leadership. And one of the things that was just astonishing to me was how young you were when you moved. Not that you're not young now, but when you moved into your leadership role, it was at a very young age. Tell us a little bit about that and about the journey.
Yeah, well, I have the gray now, so I'm not as young anymore. It came through during the last year, but God has opened up a lot of unusual paths for me. I don't exactly know why. I think I'm starting to get what he was up to, but from a leadership perspective, I have had the opportunity to have some pretty big jobs early in life. And most recently, I was appointed into the role I'm in today, president of the Giant Company, when I was 38. And in my industry, in the retail food industry, apparently that's very unusual. And most of the time, this kind of a role would go to people that are more seasoned, we should say, than what I am. And so it's been interesting. You get to experience a lot of things. You get to see a lot of different people. When I'm at industry associations, meeting with vendors and other things, they may not think that I'm like the leader of the group for my company and, more of a junior person, but it usually sorts itself out.
Okay. And I guess a lot of church leaders are going to relate to that, Nick. So I want to jump onto that in just a minute, but tell us a little bit more about kind of specifically what you're doing in the business world right now, a little bit about Giant.
Yeah, Giant's it's an omni-channel grocer based in Pennsylvania. We're in 4 states. We're part of an international group based in the Netherlands, mainly on the East Coast here, but also in Europe and Indonesia. So my organization is it's 189 stores, distribution centers, e-commerce fulfillment centers, drivers, 35,000 teammates. So my company is the second largest employer in Pennsylvania, private employer. And so there's a lot of responsibility that comes with the job, not only in running the company, but also the impact that we're making on the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where most of our business is at. So
I had no idea. Second largest employer in Pennsylvania. That's incredible. And so you're feeling that pressure at a very young age, and you are still young now. And so you've had challenges that you've faced. Talk about maybe one of the most difficult challenges that you've had to navigate.
The most difficult to date in my career would definitely be, the events of 2020. It's hard to say that anything was bigger than that, but walking into a global pandemic where you're on the front lines and all of a sudden those that you're leading are the ones who are serving communities when everyone else is kind of literally hiding or literally, in quarantine, if you like. And our team could not do that because we were one of the only businesses that were still open and serving people and trying to, project hope and project stability and all these different things that took place during that time, while also navigating safety. I mean, it was it really was a pressure cooker of a lot of different things that were going on, because you had influence from government, you had feedback and influence from customers, you had of course a lot of influence and needs from those that you were leading, and then you had a supply chain which up until that point the American public had never seen any fractures in. Like there's a hurricane or there's a snowstorm and the rest of the country kind of coalesces on that. But this was everywhere. It was coast to coast, top to bottom. And so all of a sudden you saw like literally everything dry up. And then everything else was going on. And so, yeah, the first couple months of that, Greg, were sleepless. Our team was doing everything that we could to try and just stay open, doing everything that we could to interpret the different, regulatory statements that were coming in from the federal, the state, local governments, multiple states, and then trying to turn on a dime to make sure that we were meeting those expectations. But more important than that, keeping our team safe and keeping our customers safe during that time. As a church leader,
as church leaders out there listening, I'm thinking, you just said that the pandemic hits and your big job is, how do I provide stability? How do I provide hope to our customers while at the same time keeping all of our customers safe? And I'm just going, I heard that exact same thing from church leaders all around the world, right? As they're dealing with COVID. And so talk about that. How did you do that as you lead through those challenging times? How did you provide stability and hope, even when I know you're losing sleep and you're carrying the weight of the organization?
For me and for us, it was being physically present. It was being in the thick of it. So I put more miles on my vehicle during 2020 than at any other time. I visited really like 90% of our stores during that time. And, it was 6-day work weeks. It was early mornings, late nights, lots of video conferences and phone calls, but just being present and not being removed from the action and sitting in the corporate headquarters, staying safe. Instead, I wanted to experience the same risk and the same pressures as all those that were on the front lines. And that's part of our culture anyway. Like we're a low hierarchy, hands-on, kind of approachable culture. It's who we are. And so that wasn't unusual, but it was kind of like a lot more repetition of that during the time.
So you, in the midst of when a lot of people are pulling back in the pandemic, this challenge comes and you dive in deeper. And what I'm hearing from you, you put more hours in, you expended more energy. Is that a general leadership principle for leading through challenge?
I personally believe it is. I think that whenever you have challenges, you have to show up. You can't retreat. You have to. And by the way, some of the time I was saying, I don't know the answer, or I'm scared too, or I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I know we're going to be together. I know we're going to stay together. I know we're going to keep moving forward. We're not going to kind of go backwards and hide as an organization or as a team. We're going to move forward. And I'm here with you. I'm not telling you to do it from afar. I'm with you walking together to make it happen.
Man, that's just some good stuff for anyone in a leadership role. Let's talk about your personal life through all of this. What did you learn personally as you face challenges?
Let me say, I learned a lot about how awesome my wife is. We have 4 little boys that are under the age of 11, and I worked from home a lot more during that time. And, they were doing school remotely. 3 of them are in school. And my goodness, what Mrs. Bertram does, she is a rock star of rock stars, and definitely appreciated that. I also got to show up for a lot more moments with the boys than what I otherwise would have, and just got to learn more about who they are. But honestly, they kept me centered. On moments where I was really stressed, I would kind of turn it off. I'd go hang out with them for a little bit. I would take our dog for a walk and just, kind of do some of those things to keep me centered, in addition to prayer, in addition to, being in my church community and being in the Word, but just being with people that I know love me, not because of what I can do for them, but because they love me. That love for my family made a big difference in being able to get through stuff.
Okay. How much did the pandemic and the challenges you're facing, I think for all of us in church leadership, we're always a little bit afraid about bringing some of those challenges into our home and that stress level into our home. Can you talk about how you kind of navigated that?
Not very well, if I'm being very honest. I'd love to be able to say, hey, it was awesome, I was a rock star. But no, there were moments where I had sleepless nights, Greg. Like literally couldn't fall asleep. Or, I spent a lot more time on my phone than I otherwise would have. I've always been a guy who, puts it down when I come in and be done. But during this, you're always on. You're constantly on. And, finally, I think Jennifer called me on it. It's like, you need a break. You need to unplug for a minute. Or maybe you need to go to the office. And that's what I did, actually. Instead of constantly working from home, I found that the best rhythm for me was to actually come into the office, even though it's a building for 1,200 and, there may be 50 here for a long time. But I still came into this space. And for me, it offered a little bit more kind of separation, compartmentalization of my responsibilities and activities. And what I found is that I could then go home and be home. And that was a pivot that I made probably late summer, I would say.
Okay, Nick. So you've been part of local churches, and really heavily involved in local church community, and friends with the senior pastor, and friends with me, and all of that stuff. As you watch churches face challenges, and church leaders specifically, what are some of your observations?
Just in general, or during this time frame?
No, just in general.
Yeah, I think that social media has done a funny thing to all of us whenever we're in a public-facing organization. And the church Jesus invented is very much public-facing, as he invented and wanted it to be. And I think sometimes it's easy to allow social media and opinions and clicks and likes to overly guide us. Because and nobody's really immune from that. And when I think about churches leading through problems or leading through, issues, in the past, those issues may be more confined to those who would call themselves members of the church. In the present, it can blow up on Facebook, and all of a sudden you've got people who live on another continent weighing in on whatever it is, the situation that's going on inside of your body. And so I think that's been tricky for some churches to deal with as you watch it, as you see churches that experience either structural or moral failures, and you see the frenzy on that provides a lot of frustration, attention, and problems as well. I think the church is the hope of the world. There's no question about it. It represents the hope of the world, I should say. But it's in the world, right? And people see it, and even great leaders can't kind of outrun that influence that it has.
So to all these church leaders, what advice would you give them about leading through challenge?
Stay the course. Be confident. Know what the right thing to do is. And even when you're getting the negative attention on social media, the negative attention from others, if you're doing the right thing for the right reason, for the right one, capital O, you keep going, because his church won't be stopped. It's literally unstoppable. And if you've been called to lead that, if you've been called to plant that, if you've called to grow that, you keep going no matter what the cost might be on this side of eternity, knowing that that's what we're called to do. So be courageous.
Man, that is good stuff. Nick, let me kind of switch gears here now. So you're this, high capacity business leader. And in church world, a lot of times when we as church leaders are dealing with high capacity business leaders, we have two things. Okay, could you greet at the door, or could you give us money? And not those things are very, very important, right? But I've found over the years that the really important thing is the relationship that I can have with you and how I can learn from you, your marketing and marketplace and business acumen to pour into Stadia and into different churches. What advice would you have for all of these church leaders about how to engage someone like you in their local church?
Yeah, my advice would be to learn more about kind of the gifting and the skill sets that the individual possesses more than what their capacity to be generous is, just to be really blunt. There's lots of nonprofits that seek out, organizational leaders or public figures or whatever else to try and get funding. And that's, by the way, that's not a bad thing. That's part of it. And if you're part of the church that Jesus invented, like you are giving, you're doing it out of joy, not out of anything other than wanting to do that. But there's more that I can give. There's more that others that are in similar stations to me can give. There are skill sets that absolutely make sense in a business world, in a education world, like whatever that is, that can be used to grow and strengthen the church. And I've moved a lot for my career. I've been here for 8 years, but Jennifer and I were in 7 different churches in the first 9 years of our marriage, because we kept moving, and I love each of those churches, and I learned something in each of those, and I hope that I did something to help each of those. But it wasn't always monetary. It wasn't always being the face of a campaign. Often it was like rolling up my sleeves and being able to be involved in either leadership development, organizational development, applying business processes, or emerging trends. Like, I think about how much I've learned being an omni-channel grocer right now, and I know just enough about digital marketing to be dangerous. And immediately I'm like, gosh, maybe I should share some of this with our online pastor and help her a little bit more in what search engine optimization actually means, because she probably didn't learn that at Bible school. I didn't learn it at business school because it wasn't there then. But it's stuff like that, Greg.
Well, man, you're just teasing us now with another podcast. That's what we've got to get you on here and talk about search engine optimization. Okay, but I'm going to circle back now and come back to challenges, because you and I kind of offline were having just a brief discussion about navigating one of the biggest challenges that churches are facing, and certainly in the business world as well. And we'll just call this, all the race issues, inclusion, equity, diversity. Can you talk about that challenge a little bit? Where are you at? What are you doing to face that challenge right now?
Yeah, it's an important conversation, and one that candidly has been going on for a while now. The events of just a year ago have definitely changed, I think, what people are doing in every sector of America. And I'm glad for that, by the way. I'm sad for what caused it, but I am happy that we're actually having these conversations, and that we're making investments in education, or investments into equity programs, or different things that are actually making a difference. And the church is exactly like that, right? If you look at it, if you really do look at it, the church is still pretty segregated, best I can tell. And I don't think heaven is going to be segregated. And I don't think that the tribe that Jesus himself was creating was segregated. He was bringing everybody in. He did more for women's rights than any other human in the history of the world. There's no question in my mind that he did that. So why would it be any different today? And my opinion is that each of us have learned a lot over the last year. Each of us have probably read books. Each of us have probably gone to conferences, participated in webinars, made mentoring or friendship relationships with people that are different colors than us, different races, ethnicity, whatever else. And my belief is that it's time to stop learning and time to start doing. And that's kind of the advice that I would give. There's not really a need to continue learning. Like, we should be doing something at this point. We should be the change that we're wanting to see, not just in the church, but in the world at large, because I believe that will be compelling to bring more people in as disciples.
Yeah, I so appreciate all that you're saying. First of all, I hope that all of our, viewers and listeners are actually, they have been learning, because it's essential. If you're a church leader, God has entrusted you with a platform. And if you're going to use that platform to honor Jesus, we need to understand all of the issues, know what equity means, know what inclusion means, know what diversity means, know what all of these terms mean. And then there's this appropriate lament, right? This appropriate repentance for many of us, if not all of us who are white leaders. But then my black friends and my Latinx friends have been telling me, hey, Greg, okay, it's time let's move now and let's lead now. And so, Nick, do you have anything like practical now when you say we're actually gonna hit this challenge head on? Are there practical steps that you're taking as a leader?
Yeah, I can say in the business world, the practical step is really in recruitment more than anything else. I mean, we have a really good system that was in place and is still in place for business resource groups, like bringing together, people with different experiences or things that are in common to help them be integrated. We actually did a pay equity study, a legally binding one, and actually took action. So I can now say that everyone is paid in my company based on their merit, and it's 100% clear that gender, ethnicity, disability, whatever else is not taken into effect in a negative stance. Everybody's equal, if you will. And then I created an inclusion council that holds me accountable for the diversity, equity, inclusion strategy that we've created. And that council has current teammates on it, like people that work here. It has a retired teammate, because I want to always have a nod to the 98 years of culture that built this company. And it has community activists on it. It has a diverse supplier representative on it. And so really, and we meet quarterly, and I show them everything. I show them the cards. I show them the stats. I show them the progress that we've made, the progress that we haven't yet achieved. And they sharpen it, but they also, I know that I'm going to meet with them on July 22nd at 4 p.m. I know it's going to happen. And so I'm going to do the things that I promised this organization that I'm going to do. And I seek to change from within instead of telling people on the outside what to do also. And so I hope that individuals see the giant company, and we're not doing press releases, and I'm not getting on speaking circuits or anything else. They'll know when they see what we're doing. And that leads to the answer to the question you asked me directly, Greg. I've still got to do a better job on recruitment, because if I look at the talent inflow for the roles that we have, it still doesn't match the communities that we're serving. So there's something in the way. There's some kind of a friction or a blocker that I have to seek out. I have to eliminate it. And the exact same thing can be said about the churches that we worship in every weekend. If you look around and it doesn't look like the community that the church is planted in, what is that blocker? What is that thing that's out of there? And we need to isolate it, and we need to find a way to solve it, so that everyone is welcome. Everybody has a chance to come in.
I so appreciate your words there, Nick, and just being willing to actually put rubber to the road and lead through this journey. I just deeply appreciate that. Okay, Nick, 3 questions we always close with. Okay. Number 1, what do you wish pastors would do more of?
What do I wish pastors would do more of? Pastors do so very much already. It's probably, it's kind of a hard thing to say. I would just say spending time with real people, right? Like not just being with the people who are, the key influencers or anything else, but literally being about the people, being out there to see how people are living, what's really going on, and just loving like at a grassroots level.
Okay, question 2. What do you wish pastors would do less of?
That one's a little bit easier. Quoting books. Quote stories of life change. Jesus did not go out and talk about the author that he read here, or the author. He showed changed lives. And I think that pastors are very well intentioned and want to be studious, but I don't think we're looking, as a member of a church, for somebody who's a great, reader. We're looking for a spiritual leader that has seen life changed.
I love that. And I heard that one loud and clear, Nick. That was good word for me. Okay, question 3. What has been one thing that a pastor has done that has been especially helpful to you?
When my son was diagnosed with leukemia, it was my pastor who was there for me in a way that nobody else could be. And he experienced similar pain as well when his wife got cancer. And there's just, this is a guy who always was very real and always kind of, knew what was going on in people's lives and didn't really hide behind those. But he walked shoulder to shoulder with me in that. And there are other pastors, like my current pastor does the exact same thing, walking shoulder to shoulder. But my goodness, what a difference whenever it's somebody who is a spiritual authority, is somebody that you can learn from, somebody that God has commissioned to do something, but also they take the time to walk beside of you during just the garbage that we experience on this side of eternity.
Nick Bertram, amazing business leader, but Nick, more importantly, I love your heart for Jesus and for people. Thank you for speaking into church leaders, business leaders, into my life personally and the life of Stadia. And we'll be praying for you as you continue to lead through difficult challenges.
Thank you, Greg. Take care.